Okay, let's talk about is Illustrator is good for UI and UX or not at the first. Okay, before jumping to this, notice that you can design UI and UX in almost every graphic software that support creating in vector-based. You can create in rasterized-based softwares also. For example, you can use Photoshop to create web designs and also web mobile application, but it's not a good choice because you have to work on different sizes on when you're designing UI and UX, and on rasterized based softwares you don't have this flexibility. You have some limitation on working on different sizes. And my answer to this question, is Illustrator is for UI and UX, is it good for UI and UX? Yeah, it is good for UI and UX. Why? Because Illustrator is a very, very powerful vector-based software. It means that you might not lose your quality when you're working in different sizes. Illustrator support canvas. Illustrator has their own artboards. You can manage your artboards. You can do a lot of things. Whatever you want to do in graphic, you can do it in Illustrator. Illustrator has a lots of tools for creating different types of graphic shapes and other graphic stuff. You can create amazing complex shapes in Illustrator. And also, I want to tell you that Illustrator is not specifically built for UI and UX. Actually, we can call Illustrator a multi-target graphic software. It's not built for just one graphic task. For example, you can create amazing drawing. If you're an traditional illustrator, you can create drawing on Illustrator, on Adobe Illustrator. You can design brochures, you can design almost every printable contents, you can design webs, and these other stuff. It's not just specifically for one graphic task. It's a multi-target, multitasking software that it makes Illustrator very, very powerful. Now, let's talk about a sketch. Is Sketch good for UI and UX? Yes, it is the best choice for UI and UX. Why it is the best? Because Sketch is completely built for UI and UX, designed from ground up, from scratch. The creators of Sketch build Sketch from ground up for UI and UX. You can create almost every design of UI and UX for mobile application and web design. You can also use Sketch to create printable contents, but as compared to Illustrator for multi-target features, it is not a good choice if you want a software that do a lot of other things instead of one specific field. Okay. It's clear that every software has their own pros and cons. Let's talk about pros and cons of Illustrator at the first. What is the pros and cons of Illustrator? The first thing is having plenty of tools for graphic. As we mentioned, you can create almost everything. There's a lot of tools. If you're working with Illustrator, you know that there's plenty of things that you can access to that. There's plenty of tools that helps you to create amazing arts. The next thing is good support and updates from Adobe. You will get a lot of updates and patches for security issues, for adding new features from Adobe every year. You will get a new version of Illustrator every 3 months and 4 months. I think you can take an update. You will receive an update. It has a little bit confident about security issues and new features for new innovations and these other stuff. The third pros of Illustrator is huge amount of plugins, scripts, and libraries. There is a lot of plugin for Illustrator. There is a lot of scripts and libraries that you can find on internet for Illustrator. What is the benefit of these three things for Illustrator: plugins, script, and libraries? These third-party add-ons makes your life easier. You can create new things in Illustrator without doing manually most of the works, without doing complex tasks and these other stuff. By helping of these plugins, scripts, and libraries, you can build very artistic and creative arts and designs very easily in a short time, and it is one of the other benefits of Illustrator. The next one is Adobe Illustrator, and all of the Adobe software is available for both popular platforms. You can, if you're a Windows user, still you can use Illustrator on your Windows machine. If you're a Mac user, you can also use Illustrator all of the Adobe package, and it's very good choice for both user, that all of these platforms users have access to this application. And now let's talk about cons of Illustrator. The first one is Illustrator is not specifically built for UI and UX. If you are a UI and UX designer, Illustrator is not built for you, actually, specifically for you. You can still design, I've mentioned that you can still design your UI and UX, but it is not specifically built for you. The next one is that Illustrator is not portable compared to the Sketch. It's not a small size. It takes a lot of space on your hard drive and on your computer, and it's not printable compared to the Sketch. And the other cons of Illustrator is that if you are new to Illustrator, you need a lot of time to learn. You need a lot of things to learn in Illustrator. Illustrator is not as simple as Sketch. You need to learn all of the tools. You need to take a large amount of courses, for example, 3 and 4 master classes from basic, intermediate, beginner, intermediate, and advanced classes to familiarize yourself with Illustrator. And that is other cons for UI and UX designers if you are new by. Okay, and the last thing about Illustrator is that Illustrator is not cheap. It's very pricey. You have to subscribe to Adobe subscription model. You have to pay a huge amount of money every month or every year. It's depend on your package. It makes Illustrator a little bit a limit, and for those people that they don't want to buy a very pricey softwares for their works, or for most of freelancers, it is not a good choice, I think. Okay, now let's talk about Sketch. What are the pros of Sketch? Okay, the first pros of Sketch is that Sketch is specifically built for UI and UX from ground up. It means that all of the tools that you will see on the user interface of Sketch is for UI and UX design. You can design mobile application, user interface, you can design web applications, websites, and other user interface and user experience elements in Sketch. Okay, Sketch is portable and flexible as compared to Illustrator. It's not, it doesn't take a lot of space on your hard drive. It's a very portable and very flexible. Okay, the next thing is Sketch is easy to learn. Believe me or not, if you have a very basic understanding of other graphic softwares like Illustrator, like Photoshop or CorelDRAW, Sketch is like drinking of water for you. Sketch is very easy. Believe me or not, you can familiarize yourself with Sketch in 3 or 4 days if you want. If you have a background of using of other graphic softwares, Sketch is very, very simple for you. Because user interface of Sketch is very simple, all of the tools are available in front of you. All the things you need to do is test each one of these tools and work with them. Okay. The next thing, as I mentioned, is the small size of Sketch. Sketch is not taking huge amount of your hard drive. It's very small size and portable. The next one is that Sketch is also support a lot of add-ons and third-party plugins. There's a lots of plugins for Sketch that you will find on internet, and these plugins and add-ons will make your life easier. Good support. Sketch has good support and also a good community. If you have a problem, if you want to solve your problem, you can post it on different forums, and there's a lot of Sketch experts that will answer your questions. Okay, the next one is that Sketch is also very good for product design, that you can easily create your product design if you're an industrial designer or something else. I don't know, but it's good for product design and it's very flexible. The very, very good point about Sketch is that Sketch is very, very cheap. It costs just $99, 99 bucks. It's very good for freelancers, for people who are not want to invest a large amount of money on the software. This will be a good choice. Okay, now what are the cons of Sketch? What problems you will face if you are using Sketch? The first one is not having large amount of tool as compared to Illustrator for other graphic work. For example, in Illustrator you can create almost everything that are somehow related to graphic. You can draw, you can have different tools, but as compared to Illustrator, Sketch not have that much of tools for you. Still advanced tools in Sketch, but as compared to Illustrator, it's not too much. Okay, the next cons of Sketch is that it is not available for Windows. If you're a Windows user, you can use Sketch because Sketch is specifically built. It's just available for Mac. If you want to use Sketch, if you are a Windows user, you have to switch to Mac to being able to use Sketch. And the other and the last cons of Sketch is that it is not supporting large amount of formats, large amount of extension. For example, in Illustrator, you can import almost every graphic format, SVG, scalable vector graphics, APS, all these graphic formats you can import and export on Illustrator. But in Sketch, there's not a huge amount of formats that are supported by Sketch. There is still popular one, for example, PNG and other formats, but as compared to Illustrator, is very less. Okay, now that you understand these pros and cons and a little bit about the story of these two softwares, you can decide yourself which one is good for your workflow, which one is good for you. You can choose it. But in the next lesson, I will talk about which one of these software is good for you, considering other topics. According to that, I will give you an advice which one of these